Somewhere inside you, beneath the layers you built just to stay upright in this world, there is a small version of you, waiting. Not for applause, not for victories, just for someone, anyone, to notice that they were trembling long before you learned how to hide it. You don't fear love. You fear becoming that child again. It begins quietly, like touching a doorknob of a room you once promised never to enter again. A room that smells of soft dust, forgotten drawings, and the silence you swallowed because no one ever asked what your little heart was carrying. You don't open it fully, only an inch, only enough for a single memory to slip through. A voice, maybe. A moment. The way your younger self looked around the house trying to sense if it was safe to be soft that day. And in that memory, love was always a risk. The kind of risk your small body wasn't ready for. You remember it, don't you? The way affection felt like standing in a storm without a coat. The way hope felt like the most dangerous object in the room. The way you learned, much too early, that wanting closeness could hurt in ways even doctors couldn't bandage. So now, as an adult, when love approaches you gently, your mind whispers run. Your stomach tightens. Your chest feels like it's bracing for an impact that isn't coming. Because love itself isn't frightening. What terrifies you is the possibility of shrinking back into that small, unprotected, the one who waited for warmth that never came, the one who gave everything in exchange for so little, the one who didn't yet know how to swallow feelings whole, just to survive. You fear the moment love knocks at your door, because love asks you to do something your childhood never allowed, to trust. And what did trust mean back then? Maybe it meant hoping someone would finally show up, but they didn't. Maybe it meant holding out your hands, only to watch them fall empty. Maybe it meant softening, just to be told you were too much, too emotional, too sensitive. Words that still echo in the hallways of your adult mind. That echo is the true ghost you fear, not love, but the echo. Because when someone looks at you with tenderness today, real tenderness, you feel something shift inside, something fragile crack open. Something that resembles the child you buried under years of being strong, capable, fine. You're not afraid of loving someone. You're afraid of what loving might uncover, like the hidden corners of that internal house you never let anyone walk through. The ones with peeling wallpaper, old toys with missing pieces, notebooks filled with sentences you were too afraid to finish. The ones where your child self still sits on the floor, knees pulled to the chest, trying to make sense of a world that felt too loud and too empty at the same time. And maybe that's why you move through relationships with quiet caution, always watching, always scanning, always preparing an exit even before the door has opened. Maybe that's why you push people away even when you crave closeness, why you stay silent even when you're hurting, why you pretend you don't care even when your heart is begging for softness. Because somewhere inside, the child is whispering, "Please, don't let it happen again. Don't let me hope and be disappointed. Don't let me open and be misunderstood. Don't let me love and be left alone in the dark again." Every time love approaches, the adult in you steps back not because love is wrong, but because love feels familiar in a way that unsettles you. It carries the scent of childhood, of wanting too much, of giving too much, of never feeling like enough. The fear is not love. The fear is memory. A memory your body still stores in the quiet places. The shoulder blades that tense when someone gets too close. The heart that races when someone says, "I care." The sudden urge to disappear when affection becomes too real. Your body remembers the child even when your mind tries to forget. And so you hesitate. You retreat. You protect yourself the only way you learned how, by pretending you don't need the very thing you've always needed. But here is the truth your heart has been trying to whisper beneath all that armor. You don't fear being loved. You fear being defenseless. You fear being small. You fear being seen where you were once ignored. You fear needing someone and not knowing whether they will stay. The child inside you still flinches at the sound of footsteps in the hallway. Still waits for the tone of a voice to shift. Still checks the room to see if affection is safe today. And when love arrives in your adult life, it taps gently on that old bruise. A bruise so deep, You almost forgot it existed. Almost. If you listen closely, you can hear that child trying to speak through your reactions. The hesitation before answering a tender message. The discomfort that rises when someone compliments your heart. The instinct to laugh off your own needs. The fear of asking for reassurance. Because asking once felt like begging, and begging once felt like shame. So you learned to stop asking, to stop revealing, to stop needing. You built walls, beautiful ones, strong ones, decorated with achievements, success, and independence. Walls that make you look invulnerable. Walls that protect you from the past. Walls that keep love at just enough distance so it can't touch the core you've kept hidden. But here's the quiet irony sitting beneath all those layers. The very child you're trying to protect is the same child love wants to soothe. Love doesn't want to hurt the child. Love wants to hold them. Love wants to sit beside them in that old room, open the curtains and say, "You didn't deserve any of that." Love wants to offer the kind of warmth you always needed, but never received. And that frightens you, because healing feels as vulnerable as hurting once did. To let love in is to let the child be seen. To let the child be seen is to risk remembering. And remembering feels like stepping barefoot into a room full of broken pieces. But maybe, just maybe, those pieces aren't as sharp as you remember. Maybe some of them are just fragments of innocence, softness, and longing. Pieces you can touch without bleeding this time. The truth is simple, even if it's hard to accept. Love is not the enemy. Love is the key. The enemy is the memory of standing alone in that room, waiting for a door to open that never did. You aren't running from love. You're running from the moment you realized you were too young to understand why affection felt so unstable. And yet, here you are now, older, wiser, carrying both your adult strength and your child's trembling heart in the same pair of hands. Maybe this chapter isn't about forcing you to love, or to open up, or to trust before you're ready. Maybe it's simply about acknowledging that the fear you feel is not irrational, it's remembered. A memory trying to protect you. A memory that once kept you safe. A memory that now keeps you distant. But distance is not what your heart truly wants, is it? Not anymore. You're tired of running, tired of pretending, tired of building walls around a child who only ever needed to be held. Stay here a moment. Just breathe. Let the adult and the child stand in the same room without fear, without pressure, without expectation. You don't fear love. You fear the echo of a time when you needed it and couldn't find it. But this time, you're not helpless. You're not small. You're not alone in the doorway. Not anymore. There is a moment you rarely speak about. The moment when you first realized the world would not always offer the hands you needed. It didn't announce itself loudly. It arrived softly, like a quiet closing of a door you thought would stay open forever. This chapter begins with those hands. The ones that never came. Maybe they were supposed to comfort you. Maybe they were supposed to guide you. Maybe they were supposed to lift you when your knees shook from trying too hard to be brave. But they didn't. And so you learned early, much earlier than anyone should, that sometimes you had to catch yourself. Sometimes you had to wipe your own tears with tiny fingers that were never meant to hold so much. Sometimes you had to pretend you were fine so the adults around you wouldn't feel inconvenienced by your hurt. That's where the first fracture formed. Not in your heart. Your heart was too young to break. But in your faith. Faith that love would be consistent. Faith that affection would be reliable. Faith that someone would see you're trembling without you having to scream for help. You grew up carrying an absence, a small empty space right under your ribs, where warmth should have lived. Sometimes you forgot it was there. Other times it pulsed like a bruise too deep to touch. You didn't call it loneliness back then. You just called it normal. It's strange how children try to make sense of what hurts them. How they blame themselves before ever imagining that something outside them could be wrong. How they take the silence of others as evidence that their needs were too loud. You looked around your world and tried to match its rhythm. The voices, the moods, the unpredictable shifting of emotional weather. You learned to tiptoe through rooms, reading the air like a map of survival. You learned to quiet your curiosity, soften your questions, hide your tears. Because attention sometimes came with consequences. Because love sometimes came with terms. Because affection felt like a gift you had to earn by being small, polite, invisible. And so, you trained yourself to become what the world seemed to want. Less, quieter, easier. Every child becomes an expert in something. Yours was disappearing. You learned the art of folding yourself into shapes that fit the emotional spaces of others. You learned to smile even when the room felt cold. You learned to nod even when you were confused or overwhelmed. You learned to pretend you didn't need what every human heart is born needing. And the adult you are today still carries those tiny survival strategies, like old toys tucked into the attic of your psyche. That's why, when someone offers you love now, your instinct isn't to step forward. It's to step back, to measure, to assess, to protect the child who once reached out and found nothing waiting. You're not dramatic. You're not broken. You're remembering. Remembering how love once felt unpredictable, how affection once felt rationed, how hope once felt like a fragile balloon you couldn't hold too tightly. There were moments you tried anyway. Moments you offered pieces of your heart hoping someone would finally understand. Moments you waited by doors, by windows, by the echo of footsteps, hoping for warmth to find you. But warmth came late, or not at all, or worse, came with conditions that taught you affection had a price. So now, in your adult life, when someone simply says, "I care," your body doesn't know what to do with that sentence. Your chest tightens, not because the words are wrong, but because the child inside you remembers the disappointment that came right after believing similar promises. Care is a beautiful word, but to you, it is also a warning, a reminder that people sometimes say things they don't sustain, a memory of stretching your tiny hands toward softness that slipped away before you could hold it. If only the world had seen how much courage it took for that child to try. Imagine that child for a moment, sitting on the edge of a narrow bed, little feet not touching the floor, holding a feeling too big to name. Maybe a hurt, maybe a question, maybe a loneliness that felt too heavy for a small chest. They waited for footsteps in the hallway. They waited for a comforting voice. They waited for someone to notice the sadness in their eyes. But the footsteps passed. The voice didn't come, and the sadness had nowhere to go. So it settled. Deep, quiet, hidden. Now you walk through life with the shadow of that moment resting somewhere beneath your ribs. You don't wear it with bitterness. You've simply learned to move around it, the way people learn to live around old scars. But that absence shaped the way you love, the way you trust, the way you lean, or don't lean, on others. There is a reason you flinch at disappointment even before it arrives. A reason you feel the urge to retreat when people get too close. A reason you act strong even when your voice wants to whisper, "Stay with me a little longer." It's because the child inside you remembers the ache of waiting. Waiting for someone to choose you. Waiting for someone to sit beside you. Waiting for someone to say, "You don't have to carry this alone." And when those moments didn't come, the child learned the painful lesson that needing others was a risk too heavy to hold. So you grew up independent, strong, capable, admired for your resilience. A resilience you never asked to develop. People praise you for your strength today, not knowing it began as a shield, not knowing it formed around hands that never reached toward you, not knowing that resilience is often the adult word for a childhood filled with emotional hunger. If someone could see beneath your calm face, beneath your collected tone, beneath your practiced self-sufficiency, they might find a child still sitting on that narrow bed, holding a feeling too big, hoping someone might ask what it is. You've spent years trying to outgrow that child, trying to correct them, trying to silence them, trying to toughen them up. But that child did nothing wrong. They were simply alone with emotions too large for such a small body. It wasn't the child who failed to be lovable. It was the world that failed to be gentle. And here you are now, still longing for tenderness, still afraid of trusting it, still reaching with caution, still pulling back with the memory of those early absences stitched into your skin. You've become an adult who offers to others what you never received. You are kind in ways you were never taught, generous in ways no one explained to you, attentive in ways that make others feel seen, even when you were not. Isn't that remarkable? How you learned to give what you were denied. How you learned to become the warmth you once needed. But even warmth givers get cold. Even generous hearts have empty rooms inside them. Even strong adults have fragile children living behind their eyes. And sometimes when someone offers you love, real love, gentle love, the child inside you leans forward for a second, hopeful. But the adult pulls them back. Not because you don't want love, but because you don't want the child to feel that ache again. You don't want them to stretch their little hands towards someone who might not stay. You don't want them to wait by the door for footsteps that never arrive. You don't want them to feel the sting of an empty hallway one more time. You protect that child fiercely. You protect them by distancing yourself. You protect them by pretending you need nothing. You protect them by choosing solitude over potential disappointment. But the price of that protection is high. It costs you the connection you crave, the intimacy you long for, the comfort you deny yourself without even realizing why. Because love, real love, is not the same love you knew as a child. It doesn't disappear without explanation. It doesn't make you earn its presence. It doesn't close its door when you're hurting. Yet your heart cannot tell the difference. Not yet. Not fully. It is still waiting for the other shoe to drop. Still expecting warmth to cool suddenly. Still bracing for abandonment long before it arrives. Not because you're weak, but because you remember. Your fear of love is not fear at all. It is caution born from the ache of unmet needs. It is hesitation carved by lonely nights. It is self-defense shaped by empty hands. And like all deeply rooted fears, this one does not dissolve with logic. It softens with gentleness. It eases with compassion. It heals with presence. There is a truth your heart has needed someone to say for a very long time. The child inside you deserved those hands. They deserved comfort. They deserved safety. They deserved someone to sit beside them in their small, overwhelming world. They were not asking for too much. They were asking for the bare minimum of what every child should receive. The absence was never their fault. And now, years later, the adult you carries the weight of hands that never arrived. But with every breath you take, with every step you make toward understanding your own heart, you are offering that child something they never had. A presence that does not leave. A voice that does not dismiss. A warmth that does not depend on the moods of the world. You are the first hands that will not fail them. Stay with that truth for a moment. Let it settle. Let it soften something inside you. Let it soothe the ache beneath your ribs. Because healing does not begin when someone else arrives. It begins when you finally show up for the child who waited far too long. There is a house inside you, one you stopped visiting long ago. Not because you forgot the way, but because every room holds a memory you once survived by closing your eyes. It's not a grand house. It's quiet, a little worn, with soft wooden floors that creak under unspoken truths. The walls remember things your mind tried to let go of. The air still carries the scent of childhood. Pencil shavings, old blankets, a toy left halfway under a bed no one checked. You walk through this house rarely, and only in dreams. But tonight, imagine the door opens. A slow, hesitant click. A breath of air escaping from somewhere deep within you. And there you are, standing in the hallway of your own past. You don't touch anything at first. You just look, the way you might look at a place that once held both your wonder and your wounds. The way survivors often look at the landscapes that shaped them. This house is not haunted. It's simply unfinished. And every closed door inside it leads to a part of you that grew up without closure. You take a step forward. The floor remembers your footsteps before you even make them. It knows your weight. It knows your fears. It knows the way you once tiptoed through your own life, trying not to make noise, trying not to disturb the world around you. The first door on the left opens just a crack. It's the room of expectations, painted with colors you never chose, decorated with sentences you carried like heavy backpacks. Be good. Don't cry. Don't make a scene. Why can't you be more like, "You're too sensitive"? Words that did not bruise your skin but bruised your becoming. Inside the room, small versions of you are still trying to fit themselves into shapes that pleased others. Quiet, responsible, perfect, predictable. You don't walk in. Not yet. It still feels too familiar. Too close. You close the door gently. Farther down the hall, you pass a room you don't even want to look at. The room of loneliness. You can feel its weight from outside. The heaviness of nights when you learn to comfort yourself because no one noticed the storm building in your tiny chest. The sound from inside is soft, but deeply human. It's the sound of a child shifting under covers, trying to fall asleep with sadness that felt too big for their body. You place your hand on the doorknob, but you don't turn it. Not today. Some rooms require time. Some memories require a deeper breath. You move on. At the end of the hallway is a room you know well. The room of silence. This room is where your voice disappeared, where you swallowed your fear, where you learned that speaking your truth could make people uncomfortable, and so you unlearned truth altogether. Inside this room sits a small desk. On top of it, pages of feelings you never expressed, sentences you erased, questions you wrote in invisible ink. You can see the faint outline of a drawing on the wall, a drawing you crumpled once because someone said it wasn't good enough. And just like that, a simple memory becomes a metaphor for your entire adult life, a heart full of art, crushed by someone who didn't know how to see. You leave that room too, but you don't close the door completely. A part of you knows you'll return. A part of you knows healing happens in small, tender increments. Finally, you reach the heart of the house, a room that has been locked for years. The key is not hidden. It's been in your pocket this whole time. You just never believed you had the right to use it. Not until now. You slide the key into the lock. It turns with the softest click, a small sound that echoes loudly in your chest. The door opens slowly. Light spills out, a gentle golden light, like late afternoon sun through thin curtains. In the center of the room sits a child, not frightened, not angry, just waiting. They look up at you with eyes you still see in the mirror sometimes, eyes that know how to smile even when the world feels too heavy, eyes that hold entire universes of emotion. This child is not your enemy. They're your beginning. You step inside. The room is nothing like the others. It carries warmth, softness, a kind of innocence you once believed was lost forever. There are toys scattered on the floor. A stuffed animal with one ear bent, a puzzle missing two pieces, a tiny wooden house with a cracked roof. But the child doesn't look at the toys. They look at you, not the adult. Not the version of yourself who learned to hide behind logic and independence. They look at the heart behind your ribs, the one that still beats with longing, even now. You kneel down. For a moment, neither of you speaks, because there are truths too delicate for language, truths that only silence can hold. And then, the child asks a question, a simple one, but heavy enough to bend the world around you. Why did you stop visiting me? You don't answer right away. Your throat tightens, not from pain, but from remembering. Remembering all the times you avoided this room because it reminded you of who you used to be. Because it reminded you of softer parts of yourself that once felt dangerous to keep. You finally whisper, "I didn't want to see how much I hurt you." The child doesn't blame you. Children rarely do. They simply nod, as if they always understood. They stand up and walk slowly toward you. Their small hand reaches out, hesitant, unsure, but brave in the way only children can be. You look at that hand. It's the same hand you've spent years protecting. The same hand you've kept hidden behind everything you've achieved. The same hand you never learned how to hold. And when you finally take it, a softness washes over you, slow and warm, like a healing you didn't know how to ask for. In that moment, the house around you shifts, The floor stops creaking. The air becomes lighter. The memories soften their edges. Because the child is not here to hurt you. They're here to remind you. Remind you of the tenderness you abandoned to survive. Remind you of the warmth you locked away because the world didn't know how to receive it. Remind you that love isn't frightening. Being unprotected was. You realize something then. This house isn't a prison. It's a home you never learned how to live in. Every fear you carry today, fear of intimacy, of rejection, of needing too much, began in these rooms where you tried to make sense of love without guidance. No wonder your heart hesitates. No wonder your body tenses when affection gets close. No wonder you guard yourself like a fragile lighthouse in a storm. You weren't taught safety. You were taught survival. But standing in this room, holding the hand of your younger self, you feel something shift, a loosening, a thawing, a quiet cracking of old walls. Because the child is no longer alone. You came back. You unlocked the door. You stepped into the memory you once feared. And you didn't break. You softened. You opened. You listened. The child sees that. They smile, not brightly, not dramatically, but softly, the way fragile hearts smile when they finally feel seen. You sit down together on the wooden floor. No toys, no distractions, just presence. And for the first time, you realize the house isn't asking you to fix anything. It's asking you to witness, to acknowledge, to stay. You look around the room and notice a window. It's small, with dusty glass and a thin curtain. You pull the curtain back. Light floods in. A warm, familiar light. The kind that makes shadows retreat without force. You and the child sit there, letting the sun rest on your faces, letting it fill the cracks the world once left in both of you, letting it show you that even old houses can brighten when someone decides they're worth illuminating. You don't say much. You don't need to. This chapter isn't about words. It's about returning, about remembering, about reclaiming the parts of you that were abandoned, not because you didn't care, but because you didn't know how to carry that much tenderness. As the light settles around you, the child leans gently against your arm. You don't pull away this time. You let them stay. You let yourself stay. And in that stillness you understand. The house was never frightening. It was simply waiting. Waiting for you to come home. There is a strange and quiet truth about adulthood. Most people never realize they're not actually running from other people. They're running from the parts of themselves they promised never to feel again. And nothing awakens those buried parts faster than love. Not romantic love necessarily. Any kind of real closeness will do. A friendship that sees too deeply. A partner who listens too carefully. Someone who looks at you with the kind of softness your childhood taught you to fear. Because tenderness for you was never neutral. It always came with questions. Will it last? Will it change? Will it disappear the moment I lean into it? And so, somewhere between childhood and adulthood, you developed a quiet, instinctive choreography. A dance between desire and fear. A reaching forward, followed by a retreat. A longing for closeness, followed by a sudden need for distance. An ache to be seen, followed by a panic at the thought of actually being seen. This is the conflict you rarely admit, even to yourself. You want intimacy, but it feels like a doorway back into a vulnerability you barely survived. And so, without even noticing, you move through relationships with contradictions woven into every gesture. You crave reassurance, but you downplay your needs. You want affection, but you pretend you're fine without it. You long to be understood, but you stay vague about your emotions. You hope someone will stay, but you prepare for their departure long before it happens. It is not love you fear. It's regression. It's the possibility of becoming that child again. The one who hoped too openly, felt too deeply, wanted too much. You distinguish yourself from that child now. You live in an adult body, with adult responsibilities, adult achievements. People around you see competence, maturity, independence. But inside, there's a younger you pulling at the hem of your emotional sleeve saying, "Please don't let them see how scared I am." And whenever someone gets too close, whenever affection becomes too real, whenever the possibility of being loved becomes tangible, the child inside you starts trembling again. The adult tries to manage it politely. I'm just busy. I need some space. I don't want to rush things. I'm not ready for this level of connection. But the truth lives underneath those excuses, whispering in a language you rarely let yourself speak. I'm afraid that if I let you love me, you'll touch a part of me that never healed. This is the moment where the past and the present blur into one. Because the behaviors that confuse you today, the distancing, the sabotaging, the sudden emotional shutdown, are not random reactions. They are echoes. Echoes of a childhood where closeness felt conditional, unsafe, unreliable. Echoes of times when expressing emotion led to punishment or dismissal. Echoes of moments when needing someone resulted in disappointment so sharp your small heart learned to bury the desire altogether. Your defenses as an adult are not flaws. They're adaptations, proof of your survival, proof that your body remembers dangers even when your mind pretends not to. But here's the quiet tragedy in it. The very walls that once kept you safe now keep you lonely. Every time someone tries to love you, your body braces as if preparing for impact. Your nervous system cannot tell the difference between past harm and present tenderness. To your inner child, love still feels like a risk with no guarantee of safety. And so you sabotage, not loudly, not intentionally, not with cruelty, but with subtle gestures that seem logical on the surface. The delayed replies, the overthinking, the sudden withdrawal, the nitpicking that pushes people away, the inability to believe someone's affection is real. It's not because you don't want love. It's because part of you believes you are walking toward the same cliff that once hurt you. To love is to step closer to the child you abandoned for self-protection. To love is to reopen the door you locked shut. To love is to risk feeling again the ache you could not carry when you were small. So the fear is not new. It is remembered. You fear losing yourself. You fear needing too much. You fear being seen in your raw, unpolished truth. You fear the vulnerability that love gently demands. But at the core of it all, beneath all the layers of adult logic and calm expression, beneath the schedules, the boundaries, the controlled emotions, you fear losing control of the persona you built to keep the child inside you from being hurt. Because love asks for something you're not practiced in giving: authenticity. Not the curated, confident version of you, not the self-sufficient version of you, but the vulnerable one. The one who has questions instead of answers. The one who gets overwhelmed. The one who sometimes feels small. The one who still carries the echo of old wounds. You've spent so many years trying to outrun that younger version of yourself that the idea of letting someone see them feels terrifying. What if they think you're too emotional? What if they don't understand? What if they leave the moment you show a crack in your strength? What if the love you open up to disappears like it did before? Your mind is a storyteller, shaped by past pain. It tells you that history will repeat itself, that softness will lead to disappointment, that opening your heart will end the way it always did, with you alone, holding emotions bigger than your hands. But maybe, just maybe, your inner child is trying to tell another story now. A quieter story, a gentler one. A story where love does not equal danger, where vulnerability does not equal weakness, where needing connection does not mean you will be abandoned. Yet the fear still pulses through you. It rises when someone looks at you with affection. It swells when you start to care too much. It tightens when someone asks you how you really feel. Your throat closes not because you don't want to answer, but because the last time you expressed your heart, no one tended to the wound afterward. You were left exposed, unprotected. So you learned to protect yourself with silence, distance, and detachment. But here is a gentle truth, one that might feel unfamiliar, even uncomfortable. You do not need to choose between love and safety. You do not need to become the child again. You are the adult now. With strength the child never had. With awareness the child never possessed. With self-compassion the child never received. The child inside you only trembles because they think you are about to abandon them for someone else. That if you let love in, you will forget they exist. But love is not a threat to the child. Love is the doorway back to them. Love wants to hold the hand of the child you locked inside that house. Love wants to make room for their feelings, their needs, their softness. Love wants to meet them, not replace them. Every relationship you build today is affected by the one relationship you've avoided the longest. The relationship with your younger self. Not the perfect child, not the quiet child, not the resilient one, but the real one. The one who cried, longed, feared, hoped, needed. You recoil from love because love forces you to meet that child again. And that is the most sacred encounter of all. Imagine for a moment what would happen if you didn't run from the feeling this time. If you placed a gentle hand on your chest when love arrives and whispered to the child inside you, "It's okay, I'm here. You're not alone anymore." Imagine how different closeness would feel if you were no longer abandoning yourself in order to be loved. Because the truth is this, you don't fear love. You fear returning to a version of yourself who had no protection. But you are no longer that defenseless child. You are the guardian now, the witness, the protector, the presence they always needed. And love, real love, will not drag you backwards into your wounds. It will walk beside you as you carry them forward with gentleness. There is no regression in being loved. There is remembrance, there is softening, there is reclaiming. And slowly, with each breath, with each moment of courage, you begin to understand. You don't fear becoming the child again. You fear facing the pain they endured, but facing it is the doorway to healing. Facing it is the doorway to connection. Facing it is the doorway to love that does not harm. And now, you are finally strong enough to open that door. There comes a moment, quiet, almost imperceptible, when you realize that the person you've been trying to become your whole life is not the person your heart actually needed. Not the strong one, not the invulnerable one, not the one who never cries, never needs, never falters, not the one who never asks for help, never leans on anyone, never dares to be soft. You built that version of yourself out of necessity. You crafted them carefully, piece by piece, from the ruins of disappointment. You shaped them from silence, from survival, from all the moments your inner child had no one to turn to but themselves. But healing, true, deep, transformative healing, doesn't happen by becoming stronger. It happens by becoming honest. And honesty always leads you back to the child you once were. Not to relive their pain, but to release it. You don't fear love. You fear that love will make you abandon your armor. And without your armor, you're convinced you'll collapse into the small, trembling version of yourself who once cried unheard. But here is the difference your heart has waited years to finally understand. When you were a child, you were alone with those feelings. Now you're not. You are the adult who survived. You are the adult who walked back into the old house. You are the adult who sat with the child and didn't turn away. And love, true love, doesn't ask you to regress. It asks you to integrate, to let the child be part of your life again, not hidden in the attic of your past, not locked behind doors you refuse to open, but right here, beside you, within you, belonging to you. So this chapter begins with a simple, tender image. You, sitting on the floor of that inner house, the child leaning gently against your side. And for the first time, you're not trying to fix them or silence them or grow them up faster than their wounds allow. You're just there, and they are finally allowed to breathe. For years, you believed your survival depended on being someone else. Someone less emotional, less needy, less vulnerable. But the longer you ran from your child self, the more your heart ached for a tenderness it couldn't name. Every moment of self-sabotage, every relationship you stepped back from just as it was beginning to deepen, every time you told yourself, "I don't care," to avoid the pain of caring, all of it traces back to this single truth. You were protecting a child the world never protected. And now, the child is looking at you. Their eyes are softer than you remember. Not because the pain is gone, but because you finally showed up. You didn't abandon them. You didn't scold them for being too sensitive. You didn't force them into silence. You didn't tell them to grow up. You sat down. You opened the curtains. You let the light in. And this is the moment, right here, right now, where the shift begins. Not a sudden dramatic revelation, not a cinematic breakthrough, just a slow, gentle realignment. A small hand in yours. A soft breath shared between your past and your present. A recognition that the parts of you once rejected are the parts of you longing the most to come home. You look around the room with new eyes. The toys on the floor? They are reminders of the imagination you buried. The drawings on the wall? They are pieces of your innocence you were told weren't good enough. The cracked wooden house? It's the symbol of your fractured sense of safety. Not destroyed, just waiting to be repaired with compassion. And the child? They are no longer a wound to avoid. They are the truth you've been trying to return to. For the first time, you feel a quiet courage rising inside you. Not the bravado you wear in the outside world. Not the "I'm fine" mask you use to navigate adulthood. But a deeper courage. The courage to feel without running, to want without apologizing, to need without shame. You turn to the child and say something you've never said to them, not out loud, not even in your own mind. I'm not here to hide you anymore. The child's eyes widen, not with fear, but with relief. A relief so old it almost feels ancestral. You continue. I spent years trying to protect you by pretending you didn't exist. But I see now. You were never the reason I got hurt. You were the reason I survived. And something shifts. Not in the house, not in the child, but in you. Because this entire time you believed that your inner child was a burden. But they were your compass, your softness, your intuition, your emotional truth, your unfiltered humanity. Without them, you lived half alive, functional, productive, admired, but disconnected from the very heart that makes love possible. Suddenly, you understand why love scared you so deeply, why every gentle gesture felt like a threat, why every form of closeness felt like standing at the edge of something too big to control. Love wasn't frightening, it was familiar. It resembled the vulnerability you carried as a child. It resembled the hope you swallowed because no one told you it was safe to keep it alive. It resembled the longing you hid because it made you feel exposed. But now, in this room, in this house, in this moment, you see love differently. Love is not a doorway back to your wounds. Love is a doorway back to yourself, to the softness you buried, to the voice you silenced, to the needs you dismissed, to the feelings you denied, to the emotions you numbed for safety. You can feel the child beside you shifting, almost as if preparing to speak. And when they finally do, the words are simple. Can I stay with you now? You swallow. Not because you're afraid, but because something inside you is melting. Yes, you whisper. And it is the most honest word you've spoken in years. The child leans into you again, their small frame fitting perfectly against your adult body, and you realize something profound. Healing isn't about becoming stronger. It's about becoming whole. You stand up with the child in your arms, not because they need you to carry them, but because you need to remember what it feels like to hold something fragile without dropping it. You walk through the hallway of the inner house, past the room of expectations, past the room of loneliness, past the room of silence, and for the first time, you don't feel overwhelmed, because you're not walking alone. And as you move, the child looks up at you and asks, "Are we going outside?" You smile. A real smile. The kind that rises not from happiness, but from a restored sense of belonging. "Yes," you say softly. "We're going into the world together." You step outside the house. The door closes behind you, not in rejection, but in completion, in integration. in acknowledgement that the past no longer needs to be a place you hide from. It can be a place you return to with tenderness, anytime your heart needs remembering. The air outside is different, cleaner, lighter, more open, and with every breath, you feel something you haven't felt in a very long time. Safety. Not because the world changed, but because you did. The child inside you is no longer a ghost haunting your relationships. They are a companion, a truth teller, a source of softness you no longer have to fear. And as you walk into the light, carrying both your present and your past, you realize the most important truth of all. You do not fear love. You fear being unseen in your tenderness. You fear being unprotected in your vulnerability. You fear becoming small without someone to hold your hand. But now, you are the hand. You are the presence. You are the protection. You are the love that the child never received. And because of that, you are finally ready to love. Not as a wounded child begging for safety, but as an integrated soul offering it. There is a silence that settles inside you now. Not the old, lonely silence you learned as a child, but a gentle, spacious quiet, where your past and your present finally sit beside each other without fear. You've walked through the hallways of your inner house. You've stood face to face with the child you once abandoned, the child you protected through distance, armor, and self-restraint. And for the first time, you didn't run. You stayed. You listened. You opened the door. This alone is an act of courage greater than anything the world will ever applaud you for. Because healing isn't loud. It isn't dramatic. It isn't about becoming someone new. It's about remembering who you were before you had to survive. And now you understand. You never feared love. You feared the echo of a childhood where love was unpredictable, conditional, fragile. But today, that echo no longer controls the rhythm of your life. You're breathing on your own terms. You're feeling on your own terms. You're loving on your own terms. And the child inside you, the one who once trembled in hidden rooms, is no longer alone. They walk with you now. They speak through your softness. They rise in your courage. They rest in your chest whenever your heart finally feels safe. So before you leave this video, pause for a second. Place a hand over your heart and listen. Can you feel them? That small, forgotten version of you who has waited years for this exact moment. The moment you look inward and whisper, "I'm here. I'm not leaving. You can grow with me now." Let that truth settle into your bones. Let it soften the places that once felt sharp. Let it remind you that love, now, is not something that happens to you. It's something that grows from you. And if this journey touched something deep in you, if you felt understood, or seen, or gently undone, I invite you to support this space. If you feel called, you can leave a super thanks to help this work reach more hearts like yours. Quiet hearts, brave hearts, healing hearts. And if you want to continue walking this path with me, subscribe to the channel, leave a comment, tell me where you're watching from. Not for engagement, but so I know where in the world your inner child is listening tonight. Take your time before you go. Breathe, rest, and remember, your story isn't ending. It's unfolding.